welcome to this challenge. The purpose of balanced assessment, why does it matter, is for us all to read about, think about, learn about, talk about, bring to the table all the information we bring, which is a great deal of information about assessment, to reflect on the components of what a balanced assessment system is and why it's important. So we will primarily talk about formative assessment, summative assessment, interim assessment, and finally how that all works in a balanced assessment system, and specifically in the context of SBAC. So we can reflect on how what we're going to do is different than what we've done before and the similarities in that. So on page 29 in your notebook, there's a graphic organizer, note-taking guide that I encourage you to use throughout this challenge. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is read an excerpt from this document that if you don't have a copy on your table, I will get you a copy of this. I have one for you right here. And just the page that has the green sticky on it, it's the third page in. This is a white paper written on the principles of balanced assessment. This white paper was commissioned by the Chief Council of School Officers of Linda Darling Hammond, who's a professor at Stanford University, about what a high-quality performance assessment system is. And this formed the basis for the SBAC assessment. So the principles that SBAC is based on the third page in that have the green sticky, that is what we're going to take about 2.5 minutes to just read through those right now. So we can reflect on the things that follow in terms of these principles. And this graphic you encountered when you were in the math vocabulary challenge, or the assessment vocabulary challenge with Karen next door, correct? Mm-hmm. That we start with our standards, K-12, that are our expectations for what students need to know and be able to do. And then we spend 13 years teaching and learning, and then our students leave college and career ready. And the place of the SBAC system is that it helps us get the information and tools we need to improve student learning and our teaching throughout those 13 years. Via summative assessments, with which we're all very familiar, and teacher resources for formative assessment and interim assessments. So next we're going to watch a short video clip. It's 4 minutes long. It was actually made in India, so the speaker is the Dean of Education in New Delhi, India at the university. And she primarily speaks to formative assessment, but also addresses many of the things that we read about in the principles of balanced assessment. So I encourage you to take notes if you'd like while she's presenting this information. So does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share from what they read with regard to balanced assessment or any of the aspects of balanced assessment? Yes?
I just find that because there are certain labels, and it's what most of us do all the time with formative assessment.
Right.
And so when you start talking, because we put a label to it, and then teachers like, oh, you just have to get it out there. It's like, that's what you're doing all the time anyway.
Exactly.
You're asking questions, you're getting feedback.
Exactly. That's an excellent point. And that if you're not a classroom teacher, it's really important to understand the purpose of formative assessment and the role that critically important role that plays in instruction. But yes, I think that is a really good point, that it's really important to reflect on what it is we already do and what's the same. And another example of that is interim, because a lot of times we call interim benchmark, right? We give benchmark assessments that are standards-based, that are common assessments where we can collaborate and talk about our results. And another name for that is interim. So it decreases the level of anxiety, I think, to put it in context of current practice.
This article talks about the fact that we need to let go of using like the SBAC for instructional purposes.
of summative assessment.
Yeah.
Right.
that You need to let that go. That causes me huge stress. Because we are held to such accountability for that.
Right, it's a high stakes
that
test.
And that's the thing that we all complain about, the fact that we don't get results until they're gone. So how does that help us? It helps us for the next year. But that
Right, it helps us for this first one, right, to plan. We can see, look at our learning targets, how students did on achieving those learning targets, and it may cause us to modify our instructional plans or map for the year.
Yeah.
Right, so it is a very, it serves a purpose in an assessment system, but it isn't the main purpose for, in classroom instruction. But it serves an important purpose.
need to use it more as the roadmap rather than. But
How-
that just struck me. I'm like, oh, okay, true, but.
Mhm. And that's why I think it's important to clarify what the assessments are, what they mean, and the purpose of using them, and the strategic use of the assessments, so that we're doing our best to help students on that learning path to achieve the targets that we've set. For those who read the article on formative and summative assessments in the classroom, would somebody describe the analogy that the author made to assessment? What example did
Like
he
a
use?
driver's ed.
Like driver's ed,
Mhm,
right?
right.
Use the example of driver's ed and how when kids are learning how to drive, that's like formative assessment. And I was reflecting on that just earlier when we were watching Rama. When kids are in driver's ed, are they clear about the learning target? They know what the goal is,
Yeah,
right?
what the
That they
test
can
is.
pass the driver's test safely. They can get the points to pass the test at the end. They can pass the summative. Is the teacher like constantly aware and giving the student feedback about what they're doing behind the wheel? Yes. So it's a great example of how formative and summative assessments work together. And you're all welcome to take that article. I think it's worthy of reading. And also, like when Rama says this testing shouldn't be a stressful experience for kids, they should be doing their best. I was thinking about that in context of driver's ed. Do we want kids to be relaxed when they're taking their summative test? Yes, we want them to be so self-assured. I know how to drive, and I'm going to pass this test, and I'm not nervous, right? So I just think it's a great metaphor for the whole assessment system. Okay, so we're going to do a check for understanding. Our time is up. So we need a preposition to put in this sentence. Formative assessment is assessment
For.
Correct. Formative assessment is assessment for learning. It addresses immediate student needs. Summative assessment is assessment of. It guides long-term educational improvement, and it is the product of the teaching and learning that has occurred. And interim assessments inform ongoing instructional adjustments in relation to our end of the year goals or end of unit goals. So there is a summary of the core components of the SBAC system at your table. If you didn't get one, because you guys got here so quickly, I had a hard time flipping the classroom. But this, in the SBAC system that we're going to be getting here in Idaho, of course we'll have our summative assessments, but there will also be interim assessments provided that districts can use to have shared learning targets and teachers can use to collaborate on learning goals with. Those are optional. And then formative tools and processes. So there will be support for all the components of a balanced assessment system within the SBAC system. And so if you didn't get one of these, please grab one on your way out if you'd like to ask. And you guys did a great job. Thank you so much.